welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, The Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops, a former D1 hooper and current teacher, husband, and father of 3 amazing kids. And Omari Sankofa, Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press, is gone for one more week. I miss you, my guy. Can't wait to have you back, but much deserved, much earned vacation for Omari. I talked to him. I think he survived his 18 holes of golf in his first outing. I don't know how he did that. I would not have survived. I would have quit and walked off the course. I will introduce our 2 amazing guests today. I'm so excited for this episode. But first, real quick, just a couple of ratings and reviews from Apple and Spotify. First one, thank you for the history lesson. This goes back to the Keith Black Trudeau episode. If you haven't listened, check that out. Took the pod to a whole nother level. Well done. And every time you say supper, it takes me back to simpler times. Thank you so much. You're the first person to give me some love for saying supper. Everybody else just laughs at me. And then another one, we like the long ratings and reviews, but this one, short, sweet, to the point. Favorite Pistons pod. I love this show. Thank you so much for everybody who leaves a rating, leaves a review. We're over 200 on Apple, over 250 on Spotify. Keep those coming in. If you're not subscribed to YouTube, get to it so you can see our smiling faces. You can interact with us in the chat live as we record. We know we record all over time slots and days and all of that, but we let you know ahead of time. But with that said, I am juiced for this one early in the morning on a Monday, 6:35 my time, 7:35 Jack and, well, Wes's time. Jack, I have no idea. I don't even know what day it is for Jack Kelly right now, but I am joined by the DBB Live crew. Wes Davenport, obviously a producer of the Pistons Pulse, but he does his own Piston stuff over at DBB Live on YouTube. Make sure you're checking that out. And the man, Jack Kelly. Jack, I'll start with you since Wes is a resident around here. How you doing this morning, my man? Well, this afternoon. It's got to be this afternoon over there, right?
I'm good, man. It's actually 9:30 p.m. on Monday night here. So, but I'm good, man. I'm hyped. I'm hyped to be on here. I just got done playing some hoops. So, yeah, then this has been, I feel like this has been in the works for a little bit. So to jump on your podcast, Bryce, this is really cool, man. So excited to chop it up.
No, I'm glad you're finally here. You've had me over at DBB Live. We've obviously collabed on stuff, done a lot of things. Obviously, the 3 of us talk hoops all the time, but now we get to do it here on this platform. And Wes, you are not producing this episode. You are not sheet or shamming this episode. You are just straight up a guest from DBB Live. Welcome to the Pistons Pulse, Wes.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it feels kind of weird, Bryce. I can't lie. This is kind of an interesting situation for me. I'm trying to do shorthand a little bit on the notes even too. Like, I don't know what's going on. This is interesting.
Yeah, it's funny. Wes texts me during the middle of the week and he's like, doing the outline for this one is kind of different considering he's the guest on the podcast he's doing the outline for. So we have some fun dynamics here, but we're going to have a really good time. And we're going to talk Pistons. I know it's September, guys. We're just all kind of waiting for training camp to start and we're waiting for games and all of this stuff. But there's still plenty to talk about. So let's again, kind of like what we've been doing. Let's start at the beginning here. And Jack, I'm going to go to you and then we'll just let this thing free flow after that. What was one of the biggest moves of the offseason? There's all sorts of moves. There's the Morris trade and the Harris trade and this and that. What really stood out to you as the one that maybe excites you the most or ends up being the most meaningful?
The first one that came to mind was the Monte Morris trade. But I still ultimately think the biggest move was, I think it's Asar Thompson, or in my opinion, it was getting Monty Williams. But I want to just spend some time talking about Monte Morris because I think he's really going to make a difference for this team. Just having him to be able to play alongside Cade and Jaden Ivey, I think is going to do them a world of good. I've said this multiple times on DBB Live. Wes is probably sick of me saying it, but I just feel like Cade Cunningham played some of his best basketball as a rookie when he had Corey Joseph beside him, someone to sort of take the pressure off him a little bit. So to bring in arguably the best backup point guard in the league, a hyper efficient point guard, someone that can score, he can knock down open threes. I mean, there's not much more you could want in the backup point guard. He's from the state of Michigan. I got in a bit of trouble for this in the last couple of weeks. I think I said he's from the wrong part of Michigan, but he's from Michigan. He's sort of a hometown kid a little bit. So, yeah, I think the Monte Morris one sticks out to me the most. I know when I saw that trade come through, I was really hyped because I think he's sort of just at the perfect age, the perfect time of his career to sort of really help this team take the next level, get to the next level. Whether that's play in or just winning another 5 to 8 games, I think he's going to help a lot.
Yeah, I think it's gone under the radar because just talking to Matt Moderno over at the Believe in Wizards podcast, he was like, if Monte Morris is asking to start, you're not going to be overly happy or excited about what you get from him, right? He's probably not defending starting guards extremely well. But if you're bringing Monte Morris off the bench, all of a sudden, as you said, he's one of the best backup point guards in the league. And so I do think that's a really good addition. And this isn't Killian Hayes hate, Jack. Like, I'm not trying to turn that into this, but you were essentially starting Killian Hayes at the point last year, starting him, right? Now Killian Hayes is your fifth guard, or maybe even sixth. And so I bring that up to say just the depth of what you're able to put on the floor every night. I'm perfectly fine if Killian Hayes is your fifth guard and what that means. Somebody's not playing well, somebody's cooking for the other team, and you need some more defense. Put Killian Hayes in there. I think we all believe in what he can do defensively. So having Monte Morris, and I think he can play on or off the ball, right? You talked about, Cade playing his best ball with Corey Joseph next to him. It also gives a bunch of versatility, and we need to talk about Monty Williams. I know you want to, so let's do that. But it gives him some freedom with the different lineups and who plays next to who.
For sure. And just the last thing on Monte Morris is, I think as much as we all believe in Cade, we all think he's going to have a really solid, really good third season. One of his major issues still is just he's a bit turnover prone. And we even saw that in those Team USA scrimmages, if people had a chance to watch that. Like, he still just has some careless passes at times, which I'm not worried about. But I just think bringing someone like Monte, who's regarded for his efficiency just overall across the board, like, I don't think this man, he might have had a career high in turnovers last season, average 1. Like, so when he's coming off the bench, I don't think he's even coughing it up one time a game. So I just really want to emphasize that, because I think that's something that will really help Cade and Jaden Ivey in particular.
Yeah, I mean, just a solid veteran presence who can handle the ball, but again, can also play off the ball. I think that's what I like about it is we all complained about shooting with this team, and you need shooting around Cade Cunningham. You need shooting around Jaden Ivey. You need shooting around Asar Thompson, to be quite honest right now with where he's at. And the vets, at least, they can do that. Even Joe Harris, and I know we don't need to talk about him in this spot, but even with Joe Harris, you added shooting, even if you're giving up some defense. So before we talk about Monty Williams, or maybe Wes is going to want to talk about Monty Williams, Wes, what kind of stood out to you? What was the one singular move, if you just had one you could say was kind of the one that stood out, got you the most excited, or you're most interested to see play out this season?
Jack kind of took mine, although I kind of anticipated that he might with Monte Morris. I think that was probably the most important pickup. Honestly, just for all the reasons you all just talked about, right? He doesn't turn over the ball a lot. He does give good effort on the defensive end as a backup point guard. Like, he's just steady. And obviously, Monty Williams had talked, or at least mentioned before, the effect Ricky Rubio had on those Suns teams. So I think Monte Morris can do a lot of the same stuff. So I think that was real important. But, I will pull up Joe Harris here a little bit. I mean, he can shoot the crap out of the ball. It's like, I don't know how much he's going to play, but I mean, that guy can shoot. He can't do anything else, but he could do that at a really, really high level. And man, do they need that on this roster, like you just said. They need someone that can put the ball in the hoop from 3 and then maybe attack a closeout here and there. Like, you're not asking for a lot. So I think that could be kind of an underrated little move that Troy Weaver made, just to add a player like that offensively to the roster.
Well, I think it's one thing whenever you're going into the season and Joe Harris is your obvious seventh man, and that's how you're getting your shooting, and you're like, this guy's going to play 25 minutes a night and he's in the rotation. It's completely different when we're talking about, okay, is it Joe Harris? Is it Isaiah Livers? Who's, there's still an open roster spot. Who is it going to be? And he's your 11th or 12th guy. And team goes zone. Hey, let's put in Joe Harris, Jack, and let's see if Joe Harris can knock down 2 or 3 threes and pull the Miami Heat out of this zone, and let's try to get a win in the middle of January. I don't know if that's when they play the Heat or not, but you know what I'm saying? That's completely different scenario than when you're counting on him to play every single night.
I mean, I don't know if we're going to get into it on this episode or not, but just overall,
we can get into whatever you want, man. You want to get into something, you just tell me and we'll get into it.
I still have no idea what this rotation is going to look like. Like, I feel like it's a reoccurring question that comes up on TVV Live every week. But like you pointed out, Bryce, like, I feel like coming into this season, there is depth on this roster, and like there's questionable like lineups with the backup center position and that sort of thing. But there's so many options it feels like Monty Williams has at his disposal. Like Marcus Sasser's a guy I was really excited about, but honestly, like it's kind of hard to see where he's going to come into the mix this season. And yes, they still probably don't have that two-way shooting wing. We want that to be Asar Thompson at some point, maybe not the shooting per se, but that starting two-way wing. But they've got complementary guys like Harris and Morris, guys who can fill in gaps. And I think ultimately, like this roster just makes a bit more sense around Cade Cunningham than it might have as a rookie or definitely last season. So, yeah, training camp's going to be big because I think we're going to find out some things about how Monty Williams wants to shape. Like, so it feels like there's 12 guys that could get minutes on opening night, like decent sized minutes. So I think we're going to find out a fair bit then come end of September, early October.
Okay, let me throw this at both of you then. You brought it up, Jack. Is this roster and kind of the depth in the competition a ultimately good thing, or does it ultimately prove to be some sort of negative because it hinders somebody's development, or you can't find minutes for all these guys or something like that? So Wes, how do you see, I think we would all agree, at least the three of us, that we like the depth and the competition that's there, even if it's not perfect balance. I think we could talk about, the 4 spot and depend if you think Boyan's a 4 or not. But Wes, do you think it's ultimately a positive, or do you think you can see it as like, man, this ends up causing some issues because you're not getting player X minutes or player Z development or whatever it is?
Well, I mean, I think the maybe cop-out answer is just to lean back on that iron sharpens iron, right? I mean, these are all good players. You mentioned it earlier, but I don't think you can look at this roster and point to anybody that's not NBA caliber like you could have in the past. I mean, I think you mentioned on the Keith Smith episode that, the last 2 rotation spots the last couple of years, pretty interchangeable with the 2 ways. That's really not the case this year. They do have NBA talent going all the way down the roster, and presumably that'll continue whenever they do add their 15th guy. So obviously just having more talent in the room makes everyone better in practice. So that's great. But I do think the type of talent that they have, like the types of veterans they have, they don't have guys that are solidly above all of these young guys, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure.
If Joe Harris is stealing minutes away from Asar Thompson, like Asar Thompson needs to pick up the game a little bit. So there's a lot of that situation. Like if Sasser can go ahead and beat out, Alec Burks, it'd be a tough ask, but like that's really good for him. And you probably weren't banking on him playing a ton of minutes anyway when they drafted him. They were probably looking at him as a low minute backup at that point too. So I think up and down the roster, you look at the veterans that could be in the way for these young guys. And it's not necessarily that they are incredible talents and they're head and shoulders above everyone. They're close enough where you feel pretty confident that these young guys should get the minutes. They should beat out these guys for the rotation spots. And when they do, they've earned it. So I only think of it as a good thing. I think it's just going to help everyone up and down.
All right, Jack, it's going to give us content to talk about during training camp, but what do you think? Are you intrigued to see how it plays out during the season? Do you think it's ultimately a positive, or are there some reservations where you're like, to counter Wes, Alec Burks is playing and Marcus Sasser isn't, and Joe Harris and Isaiah Livers are playing and Asar Thompson isn't, and you're paying Marvin Bagley $12 million a year to not get any minutes because there's too many bigs. Do you see a negative, or are you just overly excited because of a lot of the things we've talked about?
Yeah, look, I think West sort of nailed it, to be honest, because I think we're at the point of this rebuild, restoration, whatever you want to title it, where it's like, it's time to start winning games. And West put it pretty well then. Like, none of these veterans, like Monte Morris is a really, really good backup point guard. But if he's somehow taking minutes from Jaden Ivey or, I mean, I can't say it being Cade Cunningham, but like, as Wes said, like, that's on those young guys. Like, they need to step up, or they might not be up to it. Like, we all think they are, but we're going to find out a lot. Like Killian Hayes, Marvin Bagley, James Wiseman, like, if they're not getting minutes opening night, I don't really want to see people sort of getting upset at the coaching staff, like, because the goal should be to win more games. And to win more games, sometimes you might need to play veterans, or sometimes the young guys are going to go through ups and downs. I honestly think with these like 12, 13 guys, there'll be some nights where guys feature and then maybe they don't feature on like a West Coast road trip. maybe Joe Harris plays a week, has a few days off. He's battling with injuries. And that's the other thing, injuries. Start of last season, I was so excited. And then we had the Cade injury. Marvin Bagley, I don't think, started the season. Stu was injured. There's so many injuries in that first 20 to 30 games, which I think really hampered the last season. And then we all know about the Cade injury. But yeah, I think it's a good thing. We need competition. These young guys need to fight for minutes. I think Dwayne Casey was one thing I really enjoyed with him is he gave these young guys a long leash and we got to see as much of them as we could when they were on the court and not injured. But I think Monty Williams is coming in with a new mindset. I'm sure Troy Weaver needs to start seeing some wins. I know he got a contract extension, but especially when Tom Gores has just paid the biggest coaching contract in NBA history, I think it's all a good thing. It's time to put some pressure on these young guys to take it to the next level.
Well, I think we have to see the young guys play well is the biggest thing, but that's going to correlate directly with wins because, as you said, Wes, we're probably winning games because of the young. These veterans aren't so good that they're going to be just being the main purpose for them. I think they're good supplemental players, complementary players to what hopefully Cade and Ivy and Duren will be, and that will inherently lead to some more wins. But I think you're right. Troy has lost a lot of the goodwill with, I think, a lot of the fan base. I've said this before on the pod. I only interact with Pistons fans on Twitter, so that's the only subset of the fan base I get. So walking the streets of Detroit, I'm sure nobody's talking about the Pistons. They're only talking about the Lions. Shout out the Lions. Congrats on their week 1 win. A huge win for the Detroit
I know that
Lions.
hurts you to say that.
Listen, I just had to stay off Twitter. I got on one time. I was like, oh man, I got to log off right away and I'll wait till Saturday for things to calm down before I get back on. No, there's no hate. It's just I live and die with the Chiefs. So I died that night and Lions fans are celebrating and they should be. It was great. And I enjoy I love Dan Campbell. He seems like an awesome coach and it's fun and all of that. I know we got sidetracked there, but it seems like Pistons fans have lost a little bit of patience. I don't know how you guys feel. Let's go ahead and talk about this before we go to the break. Do you feel Pistons fans, and maybe even Tom Gores, have lost a little bit of patience or at least said, Troy, we got to see some results? And is it about what we see on the floor this year? Is it about the next moves that are coming? Because there are some important moves coming down the road as well. Wes, where do you think the organization is at with Troy Weaver? I know we didn't have this on the outline, but this is why we love the kind of the free-flowing stuff as we just walk ourselves into these questions. Where do you think the organization and the fan base is at with Troy Weaver?
So honestly, I have no idea where Tom Gores might be on this. And like you, I pretty much am only interacting on Twitter. So it's a big up and down. My hope, what I would hope that the organization's standing is at the moment is not necessarily we've lost patience. It's time to, make the play-in now, but it's time to actually take the step towards making the play-in. Right. We're still going to be patient. I still think they should be slow playing this a little bit. Don't go make a massive move at the trade deadline or anything like that. But, you can't win 20 games again. It's got to be close to 30. You got to play some competitive basketball because I think if they do only win 20 games again, that's a really big issue for this rebuild. Either someone really big got hurt again, like Cade got hurt again, knock on wood that he doesn't, or, no one's playing up to their potential this year. Those are the only ways you only win 20 games. So if that happens again, that's the bottom falling out. That's your worst case scenario. And if they can just get to, 28, okay, great. That was probably a successful year. And then that off season, you can take a step forward. That's where I hope their head's at. I have no idea if it is. And I'm a little nervous that it's not.
That's still 11 win improvement from what we saw last year. And so I understand all of the arguments of that wasn't a 17 win roster. At the end of the day, they still only won 17 games. I understand, as you pointed out earlier, Jack, there was a bunch of injuries. And, again, and when it's Cade Cunningham, that's huge. But the team only won 17 games. That really happened. And you can't just expect, maybe it'll happen, but a 20-win improvement to 37, that's a lot. So 28 would be okay with me. I've kind of set my over-under expectations right around 30. If they can get to that number, I think I'm going to be pretty happy. there could be some questions. How good was Cade actually? How good was Jaden? How good did Asar look? How much was it on the veterans? Did Boyan just have another like unbelievable season like we saw last year? And that's why they won so many games. But before we go to break, Jack, where are you at with Troy Weaver? Whatever perspective you want, Jack, yours, the fan bases, where you think maybe the organization, because we saw Tom Gore seemingly take the coaching search into his own hands. And that's when it first triggered for me a little bit like, okay, maybe there's a little bit of like, we're pulling the reins back just a tad.
Yeah. So for me, I still like this season is still like, I know I just went on a bit of a tangent saying like it's time to win, rah, rah, rah. But for me, it's still like a bit of a developmental season. I don't think that aligns with most of the fan base. And I get that as a fan base. Like if you're just tuning in to watch this team, like you want to see them win. But for me, like the season after this one is like, all right, if they're not making the play in, then we have a bit to be concerned about. But this season, I think last season was a bit of a lost season, to be honest. Like there's development, of course, but I think it was completely derailed by a number of things. And I think if Detroit had have got the number one overall pick and got Victor Wembanyama, no one would have cared about those last 25 games. I think ultimately the franchise put out a product on the court to get Victor Wembanyama and try and figure out this roster. The lottery gods said, we're not helping you out again. And it is what it is. Horrible season, but I think this season's still developmental. Like Wes said, if you win 28 to 30 games or more, I think if that's because Cade's played pretty well, Jaden Ivey's taken some steps and that sort of thing, you can be really confident heading into next season. As you pointed out, Bryce, if it's off the back of 30-plus-year-olds sort of leading the charge, then we have some concern, but I'm still remaining patient. I think, I'm pretty excited for this season, but it's not ultimately going to come down to whether or not they win 35 games or more.
I want to build off that patience and what you just talked about and kind of the lost season. When we come back from this short break, stay with us. We'll be back here right after this. We are back with the Pistons Pulse. I'm joined by my guys from DBB Live, Wes Davenport, Jack Kelly. Always huge shout out to Detroit Bad Boys. That's where I got my start. I would be anywhere close to doing the things I'm getting to do now if it wasn't for Sean Corp, Laz Jackson, and the crew over there. So thank you to those guys. Always shout them out. And if you aren't tuning in every week to Wes and Jack on DBB Live, you need to go subscribe right now on YouTube. They go live on Fridays now, right, guys? It's on Fridays. And so make sure you're tuning into that. Sometimes Thursday, flexible, just like the Pistons Pulse. So I think you subscribe and it dings at you or whatever, and you know whenever it goes. So I want to stay with the lost season because I will admit, when Cade went down last year, I came on the Pistons Pulse and I said, hey, it's okay. It doesn't slow things down that much, yada, yada, yada. And what I miscalculated, so this is the perspective I want to get from you guys, is we still don't know who this young core is. I think we know who the young core is. To me, there's 4. I'm not going to include Isaiah Stewart, although I love Isaiah Stewart. I think he's a little bit more complimentary, but I think it's Cade, Jaden, Jalen, and Asar. We don't know who those guys are. I know who I think Cade Cunningham is. I know who I think Jaden Ivey is. Duran can be those type of things. But to your point, Jack, I think what last year did was it was almost a wasted season in that we didn't get 82 games to find out if Cade is truly face of the franchise or not. We saw Jaden in a role that probably doesn't suit him best. So, Wes, I'll let you build off of that. Do you feel like last year was that way? Do you feel like that's where you are with patience in, this is 3 years into it now, but it's almost hard to count last season because of the injuries and not knowing where these guys are at. And we need to slow play it for another 6 to 9 months.
I think last year was definitely a lost season. I don't know if I'd call it a wasted season. You did get a lot of Jaden Ivey. You did get a lot of Jalen Duran. But the injuries obviously up and down the roster really kind of tanked everything. And we keep pointing out that, they only won 17 games last year. What worst team in the league didn't have a lot of injury issues? I think that's all valid. I remember thinking at the time, though, when Cade was debating actually getting the surgery, that, it's a trade-off for him, right? You could either have him play through it and probably get the surgery in the offseason, maybe miss a little bit at the start of this season. You'd know a lot more about him and about how he fits with the team And you're doing that at the risk of maybe longer term injury as well to him. Or if you have him go do it and just get it done, right away, like you did then, now obviously everything's still up in the air. We really don't even know what we have with him, with how he fits, with how the entire vision of the Pistons rebuild is going to go. There's no direction at the moment. It's kind of in limbo. So, I mean, I still think it was probably the right choice to do it the way that they did. Like I said, I don't know if I'd call last season wasted. I think there was some valuable reps that were given to a few of these young guys, but it's definitely kind of in limbo, at least for the first month of this upcoming season, when we know a little bit more about how these guys are going to interact out there.
Jack, is that where you're at? Is that where your patience for this past offseason comes from? Or do you feel like you have a better grasp of this young core and you're like, no, we know what they need to fit, piece here, piece here, piece here?
So I think one of my favorite points that Wes has made just on DBB Live is that it's come from him talking about his projected starting lineup is you want to see how these 3 to 4 core players are going to play together. And Bruce, you touched on it. I love seeing Jaden Ivey get point guard reps, and he sort of developed a pull-up game, out of pick and roll and things like that, which is all beneficial. But ultimately, he's going to be playing alongside Cade Cunningham as a two guard or combo guard, whatever you want to call it. And Jalen Duren played I think it was, I've been saying it was 80 minutes, but I'm pretty sure I checked. It was under 50 minutes. So he just didn't get to play with Cade last season. And this isn't stuff I'm worried about long term, but this is why I think you can sort of say it was a bit of a lost season, because you still don't really know fully what you have with these 4 guys. And obviously Asar Thompson's new to the team. And I think I say it's a lost season overall because if you just look at it for Troy Weaver and from the team building perspective, obviously things aren't going to go linear and perfect, but just to sort of have the whole thing derailed so early in the season, it did feel a bit lost. So, but that does feed into a bit of the patience for this season, of course. And I just still think as well, your best players or the guys that are the 3 to 4 players that are going to be starting are in their first, second or third season. So that comes with growing pains as well. So yeah, I think that's where my patience comes from.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely slowed the fan base's excitement about the season when Cade went out and is what are we tuning in to watch? Because Bojan is fun when Bojan's hitting threes off of Cade and Jaden and Jalen Duren. Bojan's not as fun whenever he's the guy ISOing and, so it definitely factored into that. Before we move on to really look ahead to this next season and what we want to see specifically from some guys, was there any disappointment? Because I've heard disappointment from the fan base and I hear it and I understand it. I think you can always look. I think Troy Weaver is the ultimate. There's a lot of individual moves you can pick apart. Grand scheme, I still think the direction is fine. Even if there's little moves along the way that I don't agree with or haven't loved, I think grand scheme, he still put the team in position to be successful, flexibility, all of those things. But was there... I think all 3 of us were, hey, this offseason was fine for the Pistons. We were okay with the direction that was chosen. But was there an individual move, a contract that was too much, not enough, maybe a move that was out there, a player that was acquired by another team where you're like, man, why didn't the Pistons get in on that? Just anything that maybe left a little bit wanting some more, or you felt like, Troy Weaver could have went after it.
This offseason, I was probably, I don't know, I felt like the only one. I couldn't have been the only one. I didn't want him to do anything at all. A lot of people wanted Cam Johnson. I wanted nothing to do with Cam Johnson. The most money I was comfortable throwing around was whatever Grant Williams was going to get. And that turned out to be almost nothing. I mean, he got less than Stewart, right? So, I mean, I don't even feel bad missing out on that. When they made the move for Joe Harris, I was pumping my fist. Yes, that means that they don't have cap space anymore. I kind of wanted them to stay pat. Because of everything that we've been saying, right? We know nothing about how this roster is going to interact. And there is talent on the roster when it's healthy. And it wasn't healthy last year. So they augmented that. They got Monte Morris, who's a much better backup point guard. That's an upgrade there at that spot. You increase the shooting with Joe Harris, and then you're going to return everyone healthy. And hopefully they can mesh and figure it all out that way. So I was actually pretty excited when all this was going down, and it seemed like a lot of people were a little more upset. But I know I'm the outlier.
But you wanted Grant Williams. You talked a lot about, I don't want to say you wanted, but you talked a lot about Grant. You didn't see the contract Grant Williams got and say, man, why didn't Troy go after that? Like, did that hit you at all when you saw that move where he got signed and traded, where you're like, I think that Troy should have tried to get involved in that?
This is kind of a cop-out, I will admit it. But because of when that move happened and the Pistons already had done everything with the cap space, not really. Like, I don't think they missed the boat on going for Grant Williams. I had targeted and kind of big red circled Grant Williams because that to me was the only acceptable use of the, maybe half the cap space that they were going to spend. Like, if you want a big money guy, quote unquote big money, that was the one where I was like, okay, I could see that working and it's not going to be huge. So I was comfortable with that. But then by the time that Williams actually got the contract, it was right about in the range that we had all talked about previously that he might get. It was on the low end, but it was in the range. But they had no cap space left. They had already done everything to kind of stand pat and just work around the edges on this roster. So I was pretty comfortable at that point. I wasn't regretting not going after Grant Williams. Plus the Stewart extension, I really didn't factor that into the offseason either. And I was pretty happy with that one.
Yeah, so that's where I think a lot of fans would be like, Troy should have just waited instead of taking on what they see as a sin contract with Joe Harris, which is like, it still is, even if we think you can get some production from Joe Harris. He's not worth $20 million or whatever he's making. That's why you got, a couple second round picks to come with him. But a lot of people said, hey, if you're only getting second round picks for Joe Harris, just wait it out and see what you can get later in free agency. Jack, was there a move that was or was not made that, I don't want to say it was an over critique, but you just found yourself going, man, I wish he would have done this, or I wish he wouldn't have done that?
Honestly, like, these aren't even fair on Troy, but the true fan in me was like hopeful for Cam Johnson. And I know all the things that and I don't know. I feel like the Pistons would have been in some conversations. I feel like that was reported. So this isn't even fair on Troy because ultimately he's a restricted free agent, can only do so much. The true fan in me, that just loves the Pistons, was a bit hopeful that they'd make a bit of a splash signing. But I know long term, I don't think it matters. I think it would have been a bit of an overpay, and Cam Johnson's injury history is scary. The other one that just sucked was the lottery, and that's got nothing to do with Troy, but that just sucked. Falling to pick 5, that stung. I just thought the Pistons are going to be in the top 3. And look, I'm hopeful for Asar Thompson. I wasn't the highest on him coming into the draft, but from what I saw, he's going to be a really good player. He has work ethic. He has everything you'd want. But yeah, that just stung, and that's not on Troy at all. I think for me, the Monty Williams hire has just, and I don't even know, because that coaching search for a minute it wasn't looking exciting. And who knows? Kevin Ollie might turn out to be a great NBA coach.
Sure.
I've forgotten the other Bucks assistant who, I'm blank. Anyway,
Charles Lee.
Yeah. For a minute, that was looking pretty dire in terms of just the options. But to get Monty Williams, I don't know. I'm really excited for this season. I think, the roster makes some sense. And I think there's a trade coming at some point, but
they're set up for a trade. They have 4 veterans on expiring essentially contracts. I know Boyan, I said it last episode with Keith Smith, has $2 million next year, but it's essentially expiring. They have the Bagley $12 million contract. You have some young pieces. You actually can trade some future draft picks. Now, even if you don't do anything with the Knicks, you still have way out future first round picks. There's got to be some second round picks there somewhere. Those are flying all over the place. So there's moves to be made if they want to make them. So that it will be interesting to see how they end up putting all of that together. Let's move into, I wanted to talk about this real quick. I think what the lottery drop really puts pressure on is Cade and Ivy being the guys. So I want to get your guys' perspective on that real quick, because if you draft Wemby or Scoot, or maybe even Brandon Miller, depending on and I know there was fit concerns with Scoot, but I think you have another potential star, multi-time all-star, potential time all-NBA talent. And now it's okay if one of Cade or Ivy or Duren isn't that. I think Asar is going to be really good. I was feel like I was a little bit wrong and misevaluated who he was as an archetype coming into the draft. And seeing it Summer League, I'm like, okay, this makes more sense. We all talk about the Andre Iguodala type. Well, that's not a multi-time All-Star, multi-time All-NBA player, right? As good as Andre Iguodala is, and that is great value at number 5 still. So nobody misconstrue this, but I think it puts pressure on Cade, Ivy, Duren to be the dudes because Ausar may not be this just 25-point-a-game two-way player. Wes, I guess, where are you at on that just in terms of, am I not giving Ausar enough credit? Or do you think that that's kind of miscalculated in terms of putting a little more pressure on those guys to be, quote unquote, the guys?
I'm not actually even sure if this puts any pressure on Jaden Ivey to be the guy more than he already had. I think this all still falls onto Cade Cunningham. I mean, if we think back to Jaden Ivey's draft, right? You had 4 guys that everyone was considering or theoretically considering. It was Ivey, Keegan Murray, Shaedon Sharpe, Ben Math.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And we were having the conversations all the time of, are any of these guys able to for sure be the guy, at some point in the future? And I mean, obviously a lot of us really like Jaden Ivey. I really like Jaden Ivey, even though I was on the Keegan Murray train. I think it's still up in the air for him. And I'm not sure that falling to 5 and taking another guy who you look at and you go, can he step up into that role? Can he develop into that one day? Don't know. We'll see. I'm not sure that it puts any additional pressure on Ivy. I kind of feel that Ivy, Duren, and now Ausar Thompson are kind of sharing that shouldering that load equally, I should say, between one of these 3 need to be a number 2, right? But all of that still rests on the assumption that Cade can be the number 1. So the fact that they didn't get a Scoot, they didn't get a Wemby, they didn't get a Brandon Miller, where you could pretty confidently say, yeah, they're going to score a bunch, they're going to be the guy one day. I think this just shifts even more onto Cade Cunningham's shoulders coming off a year where he lost almost the entire thing to injury. So we'll see how it goes. I still have a lot of confidence in him, but it's a lot.
No, that's a really good point. I love how you phrase that. And I have a follow-up question, but I want to give Jack, where are you at with all of that?
Yeah, I'm a huge Jaden Ivey believer. I think, and like we've touched on it, I feel those point guard reps were great for him and all, but I think him alongside Cade just is the perfect match for Jaden. I think in terms of a guard to put alongside him, you take the playmaking load off him and you can just unleash him with that first step. And I like we saw the mid-range jumper improve, the catch and shoot 3-point shots there. Even the pull-up 3-point shot was there for a little bit in the second half of the season. There's stuff they'd be really excited about. And I think just taking that load off him where he should be sharing the floor with either Monte Morris, Cade, or potentially both. And there really shouldn't be many instances where he's handling the ball every time down the court, and you can just set him up on the weak side or however you want to do it and just get him attacking downhill. Part of me thinks he could be the leading scorer on this team. I really believe in him because he just needs to prove his finishing at the rim. That was an area he didn't really improve upon last year and was a bit of a down area. But I think that will come with adding a bit more strength, just fixing up some of his pacing on drives. Yeah, I'm really high on those 2 as a combo. If you had Jaden Ivey next to, a smaller point guard who's, or even just another combo guard, I probably wouldn't be as high on Jaden as a number 2 guy, but just because he's next to Cade, and I think they are just a perfect match, at least offensively, that's where my confidence in Jaden comes from. So, and then Jalen Duren, I think there's so much to work with there. I'm very excited to see. I think he's going to thrive alongside Cade, but he's just so young and raw still, in my opinion. I think his ceiling's really high. It's just where does he get to?
All right, I want to pose this to you guys, and we'll do it before the break so you have some time to think about it. I'm going to give you 4 options, and I want you guys to rank them for me. So this is under the context of what Wes said. Cade Cunningham becomes the dude. And this can be 2 years out, 3 years out, 4 years, how many ever years we feel like it's going to take. All right, so Cade Cunningham is the guy in this hypothetical. Who is most likely to be the quote-unquote number 2, the second in line? It may end up being the leading scorer, right? But Cade is the alpha. Who's the next guy? Who's his Robin to his Batman? Is it Jaden Ivey? Is it Jalen Duren? Is it Asar Thompson? Or is it packaging some combination of those guys and you end up trading for somebody else to be that number 2 option? So I want you to rank those for me 1 through 4. Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren, Asar Thompson, or player X that the Pistons trade for using a combination of those guys and draft picks to be the number 2 for Cade Cunningham. We'll list those out after this short break. We are back here early on a Monday morning, stateside Monday evening over in Australia for our guy, Jack Kelly. And we're talking Detroit Pistons basketball. And right before the break, I threw out this hypothetical. So if you're just tuning in here to segment 3 for whatever reason, 1, go back to listen to segment 1 and 2. But I said, in this world, Cade Cunningham is the dude. He is the face of the franchise, what we all think he's going to be. List out to me between these 4 options, 1 through 4, the most likely to be that second option, that Robin to Cade Cunningham's Batman. Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren, Asar Thompson, or player X that you trade for using those assets to acquire it. Wes, I'll let you go first. Just list it 4 to 1 for me. 4 to 1.
A clarifying question first.
Okay.
Are we talking like next, second option in the offense, first option in the offense type of guy? Or are we talking, second most talented player?
We're just saying
overall?
If you said list the best players on the Detroit Pistons in 2025 when they're making a deep playoff run, you would say Cade Cunningham is the most important player, the best player, and this player is number 2. For example, the Miami Heat, right? You would say Jimmy Butler is the best player. Bam Adebayo is the second best player, right? And I don't even know if I assume Bam's probably not the second leading scorer on the Miami Heat even, but people would say he's the second best player. So that's the context. It's not just about offense. It's just this guy is the second best player.
I have my answer. I don't like it. So I'm just going to drop it and we'll move on to chat.
4 to 1. 4 to 1.
1 to 4.
No,
1 to
4 to 1.
Oh, 4 to 1?
4 to 1.
Oh, bottom to top.
Yes.
Okay. Jalen Duren, someone from not this roster, Asar Thompson, Jaden Ivey.
Wow.
So Jaden Ivey's most likely to be.
Yeah.
And then going down that list.
You have shocked me.
And now everyone's going to think I just don't like Jalen Duren.
This is getting aggregated on Twitter. I can't wait. That is at the Real West D3 on Twitter. At the Real West 3D on Twitter. Make sure you clip this out. However you screen record it. We are giving you rights to do whatever you want with this video. I know. It's just fun. Jack, let's get your list and then we can talk through this. This again just kind of happened sporadically, spontaneously in this episode. So these guys are doing this literally on the spot. This was not in the outline for anybody listening. This is the funnest conversations or most fun conversations usually. So Jack, 4 to 1.
Okay, I'm just going to say mine is most likely to be the number 2 guy. And the 4th will be my least likely.
No, I want you to do it the other way.
I say least likely first. Okay, my bad. Least likely, mine goes Asar, Duren, Ivy trade.
Wow. Okay.
So
go ahead.
Yeah,
I think that's worse than mine.
Well, I think I misinterpreted your list first, but just to I really want to put Ivy there, but part of me thinks there's a trade. Troy Weaver loves a trade, and I feel like these young cores, I don't know, with the new collective bargaining agreement and some of the other things, it just feels like there's a trade coming. And I feel like it might not be this season, it might be halfway through the following season. But yeah, I feel like trades are the way teams seem to take leaps these days. True, if this roster is going to actually contend or be at top 4 seed, I feel like there's a trade coming. As much as I would love to see all 4 of these guys build together, I feel like the odds say a trade's more likely to get you that number 2 guy or maybe number 1 guy. Who knows? So yeah, my heart says it's Ivy, but I think if I had to put money on it, I'd say a trade.
Okay, let's look through this real quick. So the list 1st to 4th, Jack says most likely is Trade, then Ivy, then Duren, then Asar. Wes says most likely is Ivy, then Asar, then Trade, then Duren. So just combining your two lists, Ivy would actually be the most likely if you take the average. Trade would be second. Asar would be third. Duren would actually be last. So just let me ask this, because I think I know where both of you stand on this. Is this about, like, you think there's a low floor for Asar and Duren, you don't think there's a great ceiling, or you just think like these guys are going to be really good players, but if this was a list of who's going to be the third best player, they would be at the top type of thing, just not really seeing the second best player? Wes, I'll let you start and then I'll go to Jack.
With Asar specifically, I'm not sure where the scoring's coming from. A lot of times when you're looking at that, Kawhi Leonard, Jimmy Butler's, the major superstar two-way wings in the league, they're all scoring buckets a lot. Right now, I'm just not sure where that's going to come from for Asar. Obviously, we've been comparing him more to Iguodala, who did have a couple of really good scoring years, right? But the majority of his career was down in that 12 to 15 range. So if that's where Asar is going to end up, and he'd still be a fantastic player, I'm pretty confident saying he could be the second best player on a team one day, but number two, a little bit less confident in that, at least number two option. So that's kind of why I weighted him down. With Duren, he's just so raw that I don't know where it's going to go. I still like the Robert Williams comparison for him quite a bit. I think if you can get to that level on defense, that'd be huge. He's a good passer. But, I think he's so raw. You could look at him do all the crazy things he did in Summer League and think, wow, he's going to be, a taller Bam Adebayo who's somehow even more athletic. And pretty sure he just hasn't shown that kind of thing previously, to this point. So I just don't know what's going to go on with Jalen Duren. I'm not confident in the super high superstar upside. So that's the only reason for him.
Well, and I will say, I think a big part of his, if he was going to be the second best player in a championship team, would come defensively. And I respect the hell out of good friend Sam Vecini. And, he's been very, very critical of Jalen Duren defense so far, right? He was a rookie last year, youngest player in the NBA. Nobody's saying he won't improve. It's just that he does need to improve on that end of the floor. And I mean, obviously Jaden Ivey does as well, but I just wanted to throw that out there that somebody like Duren, a big, if you're not Jokic, you better be really good defensively. Jack, where are you at with those guys? Kind of what put your list together here on the spot?
So when I'm just doing these sort of things on the fly, like if I just weigh it up by like sort of odds, like if I think of a number two guy we're looking at this as like a playoff team, a number two guy is probably someone who's going to make a couple All-Star games, maybe more. And just the averages say like, I think Jaden Ivey is probably going to be that guy, or the tradable piece. So, Duren and Asar, I think it's highly unlikely you draft 3 to 4 All-Stars. I mean, that'd be amazing. Troy had a hand in something like that before with OKC, although I don't think Harden was necessarily an All-Star, but he turned into one with Houston. If I just look at it like that, I just think it's likely two of these guys. Well, I think it would be very lucky and a great outcome if two of these guys are consistent All-Stars, and potentially an All-NBA and a fringe All-NBA guy like you. That's a really good draft haul, in my opinion. Like, I think we all want these guys because they're top 5 picks, or Duren's pick 13, but you when they're drafted, you want them to be All-Stars, but I think the odds say they probably won't be. So that's honestly just the way I looked at it. I'm the highest on Jaden Ivey of the 3. I think Asar and Duren could easily be that All-Star potentially. Like, they've got that potential. I just think they're much more raw offensively. And then, as you touched on, the defense is like with Jalen Duren is still a major area of improvement. So, yeah, that's how I went through the process.
I'm kind of with you. Like, I've just, as much as I want to believe they drafted 4 dudes who are going to be all-stars and these great players, like, I just can't believe it. I would say my number one would probably be the trade. Like, at the end of the day, I feel like this is where it ends up going, is you take at least one, if not 2 of those 3 players plus some draft picks, and you go get like a guy is going to be the second best player on the championship team, deep playoff run team, whatever we're talking about here. I think that's where I'd be. I'd probably be Ivy, then Duren, then Asar. Again, it has nothing to do with Asar. I think Asar is going to be an incredible, like, third best player, fourth best player. I would put a lot of money that he's at least that. I don't necessarily see the upside for the number 2. It's there, right? If he shoots it, Asar can absolutely be that, but that's a huge question mark. I want to do some rapid fire, guys, because we came into this wanting to talk about one thing we want to see from each player to be successful this season. And so I don't know that we're going to have time to define what success means. So that's going to be a little bit loose with each player, but I do want to get to this. So we're going to go rapid fire just a little bit. You can explain your answer. You don't have to just say one word and then move on. But what is one thing you want to see from each guy that we bring up that would kind of be successful for them individually? Let's go outside of the team, unless wins is part of that for some reason. Excuse me. And that may be for some of these guys. But let's just start with the guy we've been talking about, the face of the franchise, Cade Cunningham. Jack, what is success, or what does he need to do to find individual success this year?
I really just want to see him healthy, obviously, first and foremost. For me, I think it starts with that 3-point shot. I think that's the obvious one. I think getting to the rim and stuff, I feel like he can improve there. He's added more muscle. I have faith he might get to the line a bit more. But that 3-point jumper is really going to sort of decide what sort of offensive impact he can have as a scorer. If he can get close to 36 to 38%, I think that'd be a really good leap. So, yeah, the 3-point shot for me is the area I want to see him improve the most.
Wes?
This is a lot to ask out of him because he missed almost the entirety of last season, obviously, but he has had almost full off season to get healthy. What I want to see out of him for this to be a real success, that stretch where he was otherworldly before he got hurt, or before he got the surgery, that is, and knocked him out for the year. What was it? 8 games where he was over the moon. It was like 25, 8, and 8 or whatever. Like, if he can just build on that, everything that he was doing there, continues to do it like he never missed a beat, and then maybe improves in a couple other spots. But, like, that's my base. I just want to see that wasn't a fluke. And like I said, it's a lot to ask with him being hurt for so long, but he's supposed to be the guy, so he's got to have a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I'm with you. I want to see, I have maybe higher expectations for Cade Cunningham than anybody on the roster this year. And it's because if we're going to keep talking about him as face of the franchise, number one option, this, that, he's got to show it. It is year 3, regardless of injuries and everything else. It is year 3. You were a number 1 pick. You had a whole off season to rehab. He's obviously 100% because he's playing in the Rico Hines. He was playing for Team USA Select, all of those things. I think body wise, he's there. I'm not saying it has to be right at the beginning of the season. He has to come out and do it, but for the entirety of the season, hopefully he's healthy. I want to see that dude. All right, Jack, Jaden Ivey, what's the one thing you would like to see from him improve to be successful?
Honestly, it's the handle and sort of just footwork on drives. Like, I went back and watched all these shots at the rim because I'm a sicko. And some of the things that I just noticed is he was just really rushed at time, and his footwork on drives just felt like he was really rushed. And I think that's what led to a lot of sort of probably shots he could make at the rim. That, and just sort of on the defensive end, just maintaining, like, I don't think he's going to come in and be a world-beater defensive, but just give consistent effort and be aware, try and be aware as much as you can, because sometimes it just felt like the effort waned a bit. I think he can do a little bit on ball as a defender, but off ball, just be into it, attentive, just show some growth there.
Wes, what are your thoughts on Jaden Ivey?
He's got to be finishing at the rim. Yep. Like, he left so many points out on the board or out on the court last season. He averaged 16 and a half, something like that. I mean, if he just made a higher percentage of his layups, it probably gets closer to 18. So I think if he can just be a more aggressive finisher around the rim, have better touch, all things that he's shown, by the way, too. It's not like he's had no finishing talent before, and this just, is a continuation of a trend. Like, he shows that he's flashed a lot of times that he could be a very good finisher. So just do that consistently. I think that's going to be really big for him.
I would agree. I think the rim, the defense, you brought it up, Jack, is huge for him as well, especially off the ball. I'll also say I want to see the catch and shoot 3-point percentage stay where it was or improve a little bit, because I am a believer in Jaden Ivey being able to play off the ball. He was good on unguarded catch and shoot threes last year. And so if that percentage stays high, I think that really speaks to how well him and Cade can play off of each other. Jalen Duren, Wes, I'll go to you first here since Jack's led off the last couple of times. What is going to help him find individual success this season?
If he can start to block some shots a little bit more consistently, and I shouldn't even say block the shots, just be a deterrent. I want to see that field goal percentage against at the rim go down. I think that would be really, really big for him, especially because, I mean, he's going to be the starting center. There's really not another quote unquote defensive center on the roster. Isaiah Stewart can, but he's maybe a bit more of a free safety roamer type on that end anyway. So if Duren can be a deterrent at the rim for opposing guards and wings, that would be really huge.
Jack, where are you at with Jalen Duren coming into year 2?
Yeah, West on my thunder. I just want to see him active on defense. Like, obviously that he can't be active every single possession, but just sometimes it felt like and look, he's 18, 19, whatever. It just felt like his conditioning, maybe he just got really tired, and like that happens to rookies. But I just want to see him active constantly on defense, and just like he's a physical like freak. Like this kid's like insane. Like I look at myself when I was 18, 19, couldn't grow a mustache till I was like 21. So like when I see this guy, I'm just like, I just want to see him be physical, like, and impose himself around the rim. The defense isn't going to fix itself in one season, but just, I just want to see him impose himself a bit more often.
I agree with both of those two. For the sake of redundancy, I will say I want to see the passing, because coming into his NBA career, when I was scouting him even before he got drafted by the Pistons, I kind of liked his potential passing. I know we've seen flashes of it. I really want to see that come to fruition. All right, guys, one sentence, and we're truly going to go rapid fire now. So just give me a quick answer, one sentence. We're going to go through the roster. All right, Marvin Bagley III, Wes.
Oh, that is so tough to do in one sentence. You know what? Shoots through a 3 fairly well. I think if he can start to do that, that'd be great. Get over 33%. There you go. He might play then.
Jack.
Give effort on defense and run the floor. Just run up and down. That's what you do well. Score in transition.
Killian Hayes, right back at you, Jack.
Shoot from 3 at league average.
Wes.
Play well enough in practice to get spot minutes.
I like it. All right. This one will be interesting.
I don't think he's going to play.
I agree. This one is going to be interesting. And somebody asked about Isaiah Livers earlier, and I've been leading the Isaiah Livers hype train before, and now I've kind of jumped off, and I hate it. It kills me. I hope I regret it, 6 months from now. But Wes, Isaiah Livers' individual success hinges on what?
He just needs to prove you right from last offseason. Like almost everything that you said back then is still legit. He's still got the potential to do it all. So if he can start to do that, actually show it, then he's going to play a bunch, I think. So that'd be huge.
Jack?
Just put it together. Just put it all together. Like, play 30 games, shoot the ball well, and do all the connective stuff you do at both ends.
All right. This is the guy who I think ends up being one of the most polarizing players on the team this year, Isaiah Stewart. I'll just lead off real quick here. I think he's got to shoot over 35, at least 35% from 3 on legitimate volume. Jack, where are you at with Isaiah Stewart?
Yeah, shoot 35, 36 from 3 and show a little bit inside the arc, whether that's driving from like post-ups or just show you can do something with the ball in your hands.
Wes?
I want to look at it defensively. I think if he can be a little bit more of that weak side rim protector, that would be really huge for this team, and also would allow Monty Williams to use him a little bit more as a 5, which I think he long-term ought to be splitting minutes between the 4 and the 5 anyway. So I think weak side rim protection out of Isaiah Stewart. That's what I want to see.
All right. James Wiseman. Wes?
Stop holding the ball. I want to see him just be decisive and aggressive every time he touches it. It could be a pass, drive, shoot, something, but no more 5 to 8 second post back downs. No more.
Jack?
No post-ups.
That's a quick one. I love it. All right, we're going to end with, I know we didn't see him play in the NBA last year, but Asar Thompson, because I just want to be very clear. I'm very excited about Asar. I think all of us are, no matter where he was on our list. And I just think he's this ultimate connective tissue. So what do you want to see from Asar? It's not really an improvement, I guess, because he hasn't played yet, but what do you want to see from him that would kind of be successful in his rookie season? Because for me, it's essentially what we saw in Summer League, right? Like, I don't really care about the scoring right now. I don't care about the shot. He should work on that in the dark, in the gym, behind the scenes where nobody's seeing. I didn't mean literally in the dark. I'm reading the book in the dark right now to my class, but I don't care about that stuff. I want to see the connective tissue offensively, the cutting, the offensive rebounding, the defense, all of that stuff. Maybe you guys disagree. Maybe you do want to see the shot. So Jack, what's kind of success individually for Asar this year?
Just replicate Summer League, be connective on offense. And then defensively, I just want to see him play like, this is going to be a bummer, but just step up defensively. Like this team is going to need his defense in the wing. So I just would like to see that defense really shine through.
Wes?
I'm going to try and stay true to the question. So I'm going to pick literally one thing for Asar Thompson. I desperately want the rebounding that he showed in Summer League to be legit.
Yes.
If he can actually get 8 to 10 boards a game as a wing, that would be incredible. That's the one thing I really want to see.
I did some of those polls on Twitter, and I was surprised how many people took the under on his rebounds per game because I thought we were all super excited and thought that was real. So I'm glad you brought that up. That will be really intriguing. Guys, this was a lot of fun. I wish we could go longer. I got to get to school. I got students to teach. I got to read the book I was just talking about. I think we read that on Monday morning. So I got to get there and read chapter 2 to my students. But this was a blast. Jack, I know you're about to go to bed probably. Wes, you got to go to work. Thank you guys. Real quick here, Wes, first, let them know where they can find you. And then obviously plug DBB Live. Make sure they know when they can listen to you guys. Wes, let them know first.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a lot of fun. Kind of weird being the producer now on it full time. So this was a good experience. But at the Real West D3 on Twitter. And then obviously, like we just said, DBB Live, I believe will be going at Thursday this week. That might change. We'll see. I haven't created the actual schedule for the live yet, but we'll be on this week. We'll be talking Pistons hoops. Come join. We have a lot of fun.
Jack, where can they find you and all the stuff you put out?
Jack_Kelly_313 on Twitter. Hopefully get some DBB words out soon. I feel like I need to write a piece. It's been a minute, but just hit me up on Twitter.
Love it. Thank you guys so much. Again, Omari will be back next week. We got a mailbag episode coming. We have the fun lineup episode coming. We have some guests that we think we have lined up that get us into training camp and the start of the season. So thank you everybody for staying with us through this time of the year. We're about back to real Pistons basketball. Enjoy your week. We appreciate all the support. We want to thank our audio editor, Robin Chan, executive producer, Anjanette Delgado, and executive producer, Kirkland Crawford. We will talk to you guys.